Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Tom again, and this is part 6 of building a website using Python and the library Flask. In the last video, we talked about Jinja and how we can use that to modify our templates. You notice that I went ahead and cleared out everything we did in the last lesson in home, and I've also cleared out a lot of stuff we did in app. So anything that's in here and in here, you can go ahead and get rid of that. We don't really need it for this lesson, and it just makes it easier to follow along. All right, so what are we going to do here? Well, we're going to talk about static files. So templates are most of the time dynamic when we're dealing with a Flask website. We pass in variables, or we have variables in there that need to be rendered using our render template function whenever somebody requests that page. But static files are things that never change. So those static files are things like JPEGs and CSS files and any other image or file or JavaScript file, anything like that. Those files are never going to change. We're either going to load them, or we're going to run them, or we're going to use them in order to modify the style for CSS of our HTML page. Okay, so if you look at other people's projects, it's quite possible in their static folder, and they probably should have it in their static folder, multiple subfolders, which are things like images, files, CSS, JS, whatever they have, however they have it organized. All the static files of their website are going to be organized in here. For me, I just have some nice images that I've taken from somebody who doesn't require attributions or copyright, all that great stuff, and really nice images of a bunch of different stuff from nature, and so I'm going to use those. I'm going to load them into my page. Now, how do you load them into the page? Do I need to pass them through here? Actually, no, I don't have to do anything special here at all. All the stuff is going to happen inside here. So if you have any HTML experience, you're probably pretty familiar with the image tag. And in order to load the stuff in here, we're going to use a special Jinja tag called URL4. You can, so just to show you that you can do this. Okay, so I want to do this. I'm going to reference the static folder directly. So static 1 JPEG, and you're going to get this that will come out. And let's make the width 500 just to make this a little bit easier. Whoop, not bookmarks, reload, there we go. So width is going to be 500. Let me do this here. Okay, width is 500, and that works just fine. But this is really not the Flask way of doing things. And there are reasons for this, which I'm not going to get into, but just get in the habit of using URL4 instead of directly referencing everything. And there's a kind of a reason for that, and has to do with later on when you move into the production mode for your server, and you put it online, and maybe you want some other program to help you serve the files faster than Flask can actually do. All right, so we're going to do this. It's going to be URL4, and I'm going to use single quotes inside here. It's going to be the static directory. I'm going to say file name, and in this case, I'm going to say 1.jpg, and we're going to go ahead and close that out. Okay, so this here is saying grab our static folder, wherever that static folder might be defined. I'm going to grab it like that, and the file name I want from that static folder is this one here. So if I do this, let me change it here just so you can see that it changed. It's going to grab that new picture from there. So everything works just fine. All right, so that's neat. We can grab static files, and we can do this just like normal. But what I want to actually do is I want to try to mix in some of the Jinja I learned in the last lesson. So I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to pass in a variable, and this variable is going to be called photo, and I'm going to pass it a 5 at first. Okay, so this variable here is going to be assigned the number 5, and this is going to become a problem in just a second, as you'll see. And if I come over here, how do I change this to actually reflect being this variable here? So how do I make this be photo? Well, your first instinct might be to do something like this. You might say, all right, photo, and I'm going to use those things I used earlier, and maybe I'll have to do this. I don't know, maybe something like that. If I run this, I'm going to get an error. Okay, and the reason is because I'm already inside the Flask double braces. So I actually don't need this. It will recognize that this is a variable. It actually finds that as a variable in there. And what I can do is I can try reloading it again. We're going to have another problem here in a second. And it's going to say this is an integer and it needs a string. Well, file name has to be a string, and photo is already going to be, well, photo is an integer, and I'm trying to concatenate it with a string, which of course no programming language is going to like, or maybe no sane programming language. What I want to do is I want to make this a string itself. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this a 5. Okay, and then I'll refresh over here, and you're going to see that you get a 5 out. All right, well, that's neat. But what if I want, every time I go to the page, I want it to load a random image each time? How could I do that? Well, instead of having a 5 here, I could say random int, and I could say 1 to 9. And as we just learned, this has to be a string. So I'm going to go ahead and save that there. Nothing's really changed here, except every time I call this route, it's going to give me a new number 1 to 9. So if I come back over here and I reload the page a few times, you're going to go ahead and see that it gives me a brand new page each time. All right, so that's kind of neat. This adds a bit of, some dynamic elements to your website, and you can easily see how you can do something like this. Okay. All right. So if you have any questions on how this works, please leave them in the comments. I'll try to get back to them if I can. Otherwise, move on to the next video, and I will see you.